In this lesson, we're going to learn how to create a quick message to our user, letting them know how many nodes we have selected, if we have selected any of them. So our code currently works just fine, and we could, of course, publish this, use this in production, and we would be happy with it. But I like to add an extra level of sort of reporting and letting the user know, even if I'm the user, what this script has done. Because as you saw earlier, if we enter an incorrect node name, we do not get any results from our script. It just runs and nothing is selected. So what I would like to do is to print out a little bit of information in a message to the user. So currently we're printing user input, and I don't really need that anymore. So let's now use the nuke.message syntax or command to set a message box up inside of our system. So open close parentheses, open close single quotes, and this is where our message goes. So let's say we've selected, and then we'll give the number of nodes we've selected, so $D. Which is the sort of the holder information that lets Python know we need to switch this out later. And then let's also give them the user input they did. So $S for a string value that we want to put there. And then let's just give them the rest of the information. So we've selected X, or this many of this type nodes. Now, of course, after this, we need to add a % and then tie this to two separate variables. So I'm going to open close parentheses again because we have two things we need to return. Now, the string is relatively easy. We can just return our user input variable. So I'm going to put that at the end and then put a comma before this. But how are we going to get the number of nodes we selected? Well, we could add a new variable and then increment that variable or add one to it on another piece of code. However, if you'll recall, all the nodes we have selected are currently in our selection. It sounds so simple that it's obvious, but sometimes we can forget that Nuke already has the data waiting for us. We just have to remember how we can access it. Okay, so before we access the current selection list using nuke.selected nodes. So I'm going to scroll down to this, and this is going to return a list of the currently selected nodes. Now, a list is not a number. So if we try and run this code, it's going to give us an error. So what we need to do is find the length of the list, or how many elements are inside of this list. So to do that, on this list, we can add another Python command to process the list into a number. So we want to essentially find the length of this string, or excuse me, of this list. So for that, we can use the length command, which is shortened to be len. And I just Googled length list Python, and it immediately returned this. If you want to learn how to find these in the future, there's an incredible amount of documentation out there. Okay, so now we are taking all of these selected nodes, returning a list, and then we are processing that list into a value or a number that we can then put into our nuke message. Okay, so let's try running this code. Control A, Control Enter. Okay, crop, hit OK, and it's now telling us that we have selected 13 crop nodes. Okay, great. Let's try this with an illegal value, or a value that has nothing, ROP. You have selected 0 ROP nodes. Now, at this point, we could put in an if statement of if it is 0, tell the user that they have either entered a node that is incorrect or entered a name or a class that we have no nodes for, but I think this level of reporting is acceptable. We're telling the user what our script has done, as well as what they have given us. So that should be all the tools they need to see if they've made a mistake in the name, or if we just have 0 of that node to select. Okay, great. So let's move our comment up to right above our message so that we have this commented code. And we essentially are finished with this piece of code. Now later on, we'll wrap this up inside of a function so that we can use it easier in the future. Instead of having to save this out and then load in the script or copy and paste it, we can put this inside of our menu.py. and then we can wrap it up in a nice name and then call it later. And we're going to do that when we begin talking about functions. But for now, we have this piece of code finished, and so now let's work on the next mini project we're going to create here in Python.